I helped an elderly man on the bus, and what I discovered was completely inspiring. Julia had spent the better part of the afternoon immersed in complex theories, the kind that twisted her brain into knots. Her feet ached from the constant activity at the cafe, where she juggled orders and angry customers. The autumn chill seeped into her bones as she boarded the overcrowded bus, her bag heavy with textbooks, and her heart even heavier with the weight of expectation. With each lurch of the bus, her eyes fell upon Mr. Thompson, an elderly gentleman, who swayed unsteadily, his frail frame echoing the movement of the vehicle. Instinctively, she edged her way toward him, gently offering him her seat. "Thank you, dear," he whispered, his voice frail yet warm. As they spoke, a connection sparked, the kind she hadn't realized she craved. Mr. Thompson shared stories from his years as a professor, tales filled with passion and struggles. His students had been diverse, bright souls whose lives had made an indelible mark on him. But when he recounted the injustices he'd witnessed, funding cuts, students slipping through cracks, Julia's heart twisted. It rang painfully true in her own world, where she bore the overwhelming burden of her family's expectations and the relentless pressure of academia. "Sometimes, I feel like a ghost in my own life," he sighed, eyes drifting away as if seeking solace in the memories, hidden pain glimmering beneath the surface. Julia recognized that feeling well. The pressures to succeed wound tighter with each setback, and she often questioned her own worth, grasping at the elusive dream of making a difference. Before she could gather her thoughts, Mr. Thompson's love for painting emerged, a passion long forgotten. The idea crystallized in her mind like a beacon of hope. They could organize a community art show, showcase his work, and validate his contributions to society. It would be like breathing again. Yet she sensed a storm brewing. Several community members, upon hearing their plan, scoffed at the notion of an elderly man's art having value. Would they see him as less, just because time had marked him? Suddenly the bus jolted, and a comment from Mr. Thompson about a forgotten scholarship created a ripple in her chest. A program designed to empower students like her, lying dormant, hidden from those who needed it most. Doubt seeped in like autumn's chill. How could a legacy so powerful be buried? Why hadn't he sought recognition? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The bus rattled violently, surfacing her fears anew. Would standing up for Mr. Thompson also mean standing up for herself? The whispers of doubt grew louder, gnawing at her resolve. Facing down the insecurities of her own life felt monumental compared to challenging biases against him. What if this pursuit drove her deeper into her own feelings of inadequacy? As Mr. Thompson offered one last reflective thought, a knot tightened in Julia's chest, one of trepidation mixed with determination. She could redefine his legacy, or risk exposing every fear she harbored about her own. With the bus rolling to a stop and uncertainty swirling through her mind, Julia felt a profound shift within herself. Was she ready to fight against the doubts that had always held her back? The answer hung delicately, ready to slip away. Julia stepped off the bus, the chill of the autumn air wrapping around her like a blanket of uncertainty. The weight of her textbooks felt lighter than the burden of her thoughts. The stories Mr. Thompson had shared replayed in her mind, each moment a tug at her conscience. She yearned to help him reclaim his lost passion for art. What if it also meant reclaiming some part of herself? Her footsteps quickened as she made her way back to the cafe where she worked. Each stride echoed her internal conflict. Could she really take on this endeavor and push against the stagnation surrounding both Mr. Thompson and herself? What if she failed? The idea of failing loomed larger than any weight on her shoulders. Arriving at the cafe, the familiar clinking of cups and chatter of customers enveloped her. She slipped behind the counter, her hands moving instinctively. But her mind remained distracted, the notion of organizing an art show swirling chaotically. The thought terrified her. She was merely a student, caught in the whirlwind of her own studies and responsibilities. Who was she to launch an initiative that had the potential to face ridicule? Yet she could picture Mr. Thompson's passion returning, vibrant colors bursting forth as he shared his work with the world. As she brewed coffee, a stream of self-doubt coursed through her. What if community members did not see the value in an elderly man's art? It felt risky to thrust herself and Mr. Thompson into the spotlight when their very identities felt fragile. Yet, underneath that fear was an ember of determination igniting. She recalled Mr. Thompson's eyes lighting up when he spoke of his paintings. That was a glimpse into a world where dreams had the potential to ignite reality, not fade quietly away. When her shift ended, she had a decision to make. Should she simply forget the idea and remain in the realm of books and expectations, or risk her comfort zone? She sat down at a corner table, pulling out a notepad to brainstorm. Drawing on her innate resilience, she listed out potential steps. Secure a venue, gather artists, and promote the event. Each point ignited a spark. This was more than just Mr. Thompson's art. It became a personal mission. In her reverie, an older gentleman sat down at the adjacent table. He glimpsed her notepad and raised an eyebrow. "Planning something interesting?" he asked, curiosity dancing in his eyes. Her heart raced. Here lay an opportunity to articulate her vision, to bring someone into her journey. "Actually, I'm thinking of organizing an art show for a friend," she responded, her voice steady. It felt like a public announcement, igniting a sense of ownership. "Art is a brave thing to share," he smiled. "What's stopping you?" Her gut twisted as she faced the weight of his inquiry, a mirror reflecting her insecurities. "I worry that people won't see its value," she admitted, voice trembling. The stranger leaned in, a glint of understanding in his gaze. "Not every voice will resonate, but some will. You'll never know unless you try." Those words ricocheted in her mind like a bell tolling. Julia was starting to realize that the battle with self-doubt was as important as standing up for Mr. Thompson. It was a struggle against the silence and disregard that both of them had felt for so long. As she left the cafe that night, the air had shifted within her. A desire to embolden both herself and Mr. Thompson surged forward. Maybe she wasn't just a student on the verge of failure. Perhaps she was a catalyst waiting to ignite change. But another thought loomed. How would Mr. Thompson react when she presented him with this initiative? Would he embrace the opportunity to breathe life into his passion, or would fear keep him shackled? The moment to confront these questions was approaching, and Julia felt the tremors of anticipation deep inside. Would she have the courage to forge ahead, not just for Mr. Thompson, but for herself? Julia awoke the next morning with an invigorating sense of resolve. The sunlight spilled into her room, flooding her thoughts with clarity. Last night's conversation echoed, pushing her forward. It was time for action, not just intention, and she needed to summon every ounce of courage she could muster. As she hurried to class, her pulse quickened at the thought of approaching Mr. Thompson. She had rehearsed the conversation in her head a dozen times, yet anxiety nagged at her. What if he laughed at her idea? What if he turned her down flat? However, a stubborn flicker of hope gnawed at her. Perhaps he was waiting for someone to recognize the worth in his work. The minutes dragged in class, her professor's voice fading into a blur. A single thought consumed her. She needed to seize this moment. As soon as the lecture ended, she slipped out, making a beeline for Mr. Thompson's studio. Each step felt heavier with the weight of her burgeoning expectations. When she arrived at the quaint little studio, located just beyond the hustle of the city, her heart raced. The scent of paint and pine filled the air, grounding her resolve. Hesitating at the door, she listened. Inside, she could hear the soft rustle of brushes on canvas. Summoning her courage, she knocked gently. "Come in." His voice, steady and warm, filled her with immediate familiarity. As she crossed the threshold, she was drawn into the vivid colors surrounding her. Mr. Thompson stood hunched over a canvas, his hands gripped around the paintbrush. The sight was striking. An elderly man, continuing a dialogue with the colors and strokes of his past. "Julia, what a pleasure to see you." His smile widened, and the welcoming glimmer in his eyes encouraged her. "Mr. Thompson," she started, feeling the words tumble from her lips like the mixed paints on his palette. "I've been thinking about what you shared with me, your art and the magic it holds. I want to help you show it to others." His brows knitted together, confusion clouding his expression. "What do you mean, show it?" She took a deep breath and plunged in. "I want to organize an art show. It could be a great way to share your work, your passion. People need to see the beauty you create. You deserve that." Silence stretched between them like a taut rope, and Julia felt her heart thud in her chest. His eyes lowered to the ground, studying the floor as if searching for answers. "Why would anyone want to see an old man's paintings?" His voice was barely audible, gathering dust along with the years of forgotten ambitions. "Because they're paintings," Julia countered, leaning forward with conviction. "Your experiences, emotions, and stories are embedded in every stroke. It's not about age or fame. It's about authenticity. You have a voice." The shadows in his eyes began to shift. He released a soft sigh, and a tremor of something akin to hope flickered in his expression. "You really believe that?" "I do," she replied, pushing down a wave of disbelief in herself. "But I need you to believe it too. It won't work without you." A sigh escaped his lips, carrying years of uncertainty. "I've lost my way in these years, Julia. To share my art, it frightens me." Echoing the words of the stranger from the cafe, Julia leaned closer. "But you'll never know unless you try. And what's the worst that could happen?" Doubt remained etched in Mr. Thompson's features, yet Julia sensed a change. Perhaps he was beginning to see a reflection of something he thought long gone. With determination reignited within her, Julia proposed their first step. "Let's set a date to showcase just a few pieces. We can build from there. If it doesn't resonate, at least we tried." Mr. Thompson's gaze met hers, layered with cautious hope. "All right, just a few pieces, but I'll need your help." "Of course," Julia agreed, relief flooding through her as she saw a glimmer of resolve form in him as well. Yet the flickers of her own doubt surged anew. Was she truly ready to take on this commitment? As they began discussing the logistics, Julia caught sight of a hesitation lingering in his demeanor, and her own nerves twisted. She was helping him face his fears, but what about hers? The lingering question hung heavy in the air. Could she truly be the catalyst for change? Not just for Mr. Thompson, but for herself? The path stretched ahead, but would she be able to walk it side by side with Mr. Thompson without losing herself? Both their fears now intertwined. Each word they exchanged elicited new trepidation within her. What awaited them at the end of this journey, beyond their own insecurities? As the days passed, Julia threw herself into preparations for the art showcase with a fervor she hadn't expected. Employing her organizational skills honed through countless school projects, she began outlining a plan that would not only help Mr. Thompson, but also compel her to confront her own unspoken dreams. A shared calendar soon filled with meeting times and deadlines, yet an unsettling feeling lingered in the pit of her stomach. She pored over the logistics. Where to display the pieces? Who might attend? Each question felt like a weight added to her shoulders. There was something almost exhilarating about the pressure, an electric current that thrummed beneath her skin. Yet with every burst of excitement came the crushing reminder of her own insecurities. Mr. Thompson, weary yet invested in the process, meticulously selected pieces that expressed his journey as an artist. Together they curated a selection of his earlier works, those that reflected his evolution, struggles, and triumphs. Julia found herself drifting into a parallel reflection, her enthusiasm mixed with a growing fear that she, like Mr. Thompson, may never fully realize her potential. One afternoon, as she sorted through the logistics of invitations, a comforting hum of activity filled the studio. The sun streamed through the large windows, illuminating dust particles that floated lazily in the air, creating a peaceful scene. Yet Julia felt out of place in such calmness, her heart racing against the serenity like a caged bird seeking freedom. "Julia, I need your eyes on this one," Mr. Thompson called, gesturing toward a painting that hung nearby. "This piece always bothers me. Do you think it speaks?" She examined the chaotic swirls of color, each stroke seeming both deliberate and yet free. The piece echoed with a turbulent passion, but also bore a weight of unresolved emotion. "It's raw," she replied cautiously. "Maybe that's why it unsettles you. It's honest." "But no one wants to look at raw emotions," he replied, tilting his head back toward the canvas, the lines on his face deepening with nostalgia. "They prefer beauty, don't they?" Julia felt her pulse quicken. But what if beauty comes from the raw? What if it's the imperfections and struggles that resonate with people? Mr. Thompson studied her for a moment, his brow furrowed and eyes narrowing in contemplation. "It seems you're as much an artist as I am in your own right." The compliment struck her like a shy lightning bolt, igniting something buried inside. It was an acknowledgement of the part of her that longed to create, to express herself beyond the boundaries of class assignments and expectations. "Maybe," she admitted. The weight of doubt crossed her features, kicking back into her thoughts. The realization surfaced quick and raw. Could she fully commit to this venture? The chaos of her mind began to collide with her desire for clarity. As days melted into each other, the nerve to invite others to the showcase morphed into an unyielding anxiety. Tension swelled within her, bursting forth in restless nights and distracted days. While she encouraged Mr. Thompson to step beyond his fears, the shadows of her own loomed ever larger. "I don't think I can do it," she confessed one evening, her voice quavering. They had just finalized the invitations. "What if nobody comes? What if they hate it?" "Julia," Mr. Thompson said softly, "what you're feeling is the very essence of creation. Every artist knows fear and doubt. It's part of the journey." As she looked into his eyes, Julia realized that they both shared a trembling hope, a hope that this showcase could become something transformative, not just for him but for her as well. With a deep breath, she began crafting a speech in her mind, a speech that would not only introduce Mr. Thompson's art, but echo her own burgeoning understanding of courage. Each word crystallized into clarity. She needed to believe just as much as he did. Could she stand up in front of strangers and unveil not just the art, but also the blossoming artist within herself? The answer rested tantalizingly close, but the answer laid in facing a crucial question. What if she allowed her voice to blend with that of Mr. Thompson's, becoming a reflection of their shared journey rather than a solo act? The potential to confront their fears and find solidarity in vulnerability dared to reshape her existence. The possibilities swirled like paint on a palette, vibrant yet daunting. The date drew near, and with it, a choice waited to be made. Would she rise to meet the ghosts of her own self-doubt, or let the fear paralyze her? As the moments eluded her grasp, an unsettling awareness tugged at her. What would happen when she faced the audience? A collective gaze that could either lift her up or leave her exposed. The question lingered like the final stroke of paint left on the canvas, waiting to be completed. The days counted down to the showcase, ticking loudly against the backdrop of Julia's restless mind. Each evening she found her thoughts spinning in a chaotic dance, a haunting rhythm of anticipation and doubt that echoed ceaselessly. Her heart, once set on preparing a vibrant presentation, now palpitated with the weight of expectations, both her own and those she feared from others. One morning, while meticulously reviewing the event checklist, she stumbled upon the question for the umpteenth time. What if the audience saw her fear instead of her passion? What if she was just a filler, a footnote in someone else's story? The questions gnawed at her, their persistent whispers igniting the familiar fire of self-doubt. Her instincts clashed with the desire to be seen. She paced the studio, fingers trailing over the painted canvases that lined the walls like guardians of creativity. A few pieces felt familiar, reflections of emotions she struggled to articulate. She paused before a particular work, a swirl of chaotic hues mirrored in her internal struggles. The frenzy captured on canvas spoke to her, a language unspoken between her heart and the world. "Beauty comes from the raw," she murmured to herself, recalling her earlier exchange with Mr. Thompson. The words beckoned her again, demanding she consider their implications. If true beauty stemmed from vulnerability, what could she release by sharing her own journey? With trembling hands, she picked up her phone and texted Mr. Thompson to discuss the arrangement of the pieces. Hadn't he once shared how he struggled to present his most vulnerable works? He'd said those were his most honest, and those very words echoed in her mind as she anticipated their conversation. Perhaps amidst their shared artistic journey, she could find the courage to express her fears, as he had with his art. The long-awaited meeting unfolded with an unexpected ease. Mr. Thompson wore a look of both concern and understanding as Julia detailed her anxieties about the event. "I'm scared of being judged," she confessed, feeling the vulnerability seep through her defenses. "What if I fail to connect with anyone?" His gaze softened. "You're not just introducing my work. You're sharing a part of yourself too. Emotions can resonate more profoundly than perfection." His encouragement enveloped her like a warm blanket. Could she indeed transform herself and rise alongside his art? The thought began to set roots, but doubt lingered still. "We're both stepping beyond our comfort zones," he mused. "Your perspective is just as valid as what's on these canvases. How do you want to be understood?" Julia contemplated that question camped in her thoughts, a catalyst for her unfolding journey. Sharing his stage did not dilute her own narrative. It could amplify it instead. In that revelation, her heart flickered with a flicker of determination. As she returned home that evening, Julia stood before her mirror, practiced her speech with new fervor, veering away from perfectionism. Each repetition felt like peeling away layers of criticism and self-judgment, unveiling a concise truth. She was an artist in her own right, struggling yet striving. She decided to share her journey, not merely as a backdrop to Mr. Thompson's art, but as a renegade seeking her voice. Each practiced word hammered down stakes of resolve in her. If she had the strength to express her vulnerabilities, might it resonate with others facing their shadows? The idea thrilled her, a new path radiating under her feet, where uncertainty met promise. But would it be enough to confront the audience head-on? The fear of becoming the center of attention still loomed large como a shadow, forcing her to face the monster of her own creation. Could she truly emerge with courage on that stage? The fear whispered as loudly as the promise of her beliefs woven in the fabric of her speech. The showcase was no longer just an event, but a pivotal moment demanding her revelation. Julia found herself at a precipice, the weight of realization pressing against her chest. The moment of truth approached with heart-stopping clarity. As she prepared for the last stretch before the showcase, the final echo in her mind left her with one question lingering ominously. Would she dare to share not just Mr. Thompson's creation, but also her unfolding story as they both took center stage? Julia awoke with a sense of urgency coursing through her veins. The day of the showcase loomed closer, and her nerves had expanded into a pulsating energy that fizzed beneath her skin. The mirror reflected a version of herself that felt both familiar and foreign, a paradox of eager anticipation and creeping trepidation. She could hear the morning city noises filtering through her window, an incessant hum that reminded her of the world outside her own mind. Today would be different. No more sitting on the sidelines, no more hiding behind the artistry of others. Today she would step into the light, a sworn act of defiance against her self-doubts. With a series of deep breaths, Julia dragged her focus towards her prepared speech, resting on the table before her like a lighthouse amidst the ocean's turbulence. It was in that moment she sensed a shift, an almost palpable surge of determination. She tapped a finger on the sheet of paper, grounding herself to the reality of her own voice. This wasn't about perfection, it was about authenticity. The chaotic patterns of her thoughts began to transform into something more coherent as she paced her small living space. Each step propelled her deeper into her motivations. She understood now that her story was not just an accessory to Mr. Thompson's artwork. It was a vital component, a thread intricately woven into the fabric of their collaboration. What would she say? How could she distill the essence of her journey into something meaningful? As thoughts flowed freely, she found herself juxtaposing her fears with her determination. Each time the fear of judgment nudged at her, she countered with a reminder of who she was becoming, a storyteller, an artist, and above all, a vulnerable human being. Julia envisioned the audience before her, faces shrouded in shadows yet glowing with possibility. Perhaps they too carried their battles, hidden beneath layers of smiles and polite conversation. Maybe, just maybe, her willingness to unveil herself could resonate with someone who needed it. The day passed in a blur as she prepared, gathering her pieces like soldiers ready for battle. She scrutinized each canvas, drawing inspiration not only from their vibrant colors, but also from the stories they encapsulated. They represented not just triumphs, but failures, moments of doubt, and bursts of inspiration that had shaped her into who she was today. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting everything in hues of orange and lavender, she donned her chosen outfit, a flowing dress that felt like a second skin, soft yet empowering. Standing before the mirror once more, she spoke aloud, her words gaining strength and clarity with each repetition. "I am an artist. I have a voice worth sharing." The moment felt electric, the air crackling around her as she pulled in a deep breath, willing uncertainty to disperse. A realization struck her with undeniable force. Everyone in that audience would bring their own narratives, their own complexities. If she stepped onto that stage not to impress, but to connect, her story would naturally intertwine with theirs. Just as the thought solidified, a sudden pang of anxiety gripped her. She was an artist, yes, but claiming that identity on a spotlight stage propelled her into unfamiliar territories. Would she still feel like an artist when she stepped away from the brush and onto the stage? What if the audience found her stumbling, her voice faltering? Julia leaned back against the wall, breathing through the tumult. Vulnerability was indeed a powerful force. It stripped away facades and exposed raw authenticity. The complexity of this revelation lay at the heart of her struggle. Was she prepared to embrace that? Yet there remained a flicker of hope, a conviction that the act of sharing would liberate her. What she lacked in skill, she could compensate for with heart. Perhaps the essence of her growth lay not in reaching the pinnacle of accomplishment, but rather in the recognition of her own evolution. With determination brimming anew, Julia picked up her phone, fingers flying over the screen as she drafted a message to Mr. Thompson. She couldn't navigate this alone. She needed his insights, his reflections on the very fears that now haunted her. Before she pressed send, a plot twist materialized in her racing mind. What if even her message could be part of her journey, a step into the unknown, an invitation to connect with not just him, but the broader canvas of humanity? As she finalized her thoughts, that familiar question from before flickered back into awareness. Was she ready to speak her truth? The moment was dawning, but a new thrill took hold. The showcase was no longer just an event. It was the stage upon which she would paint her own story, brushstrokes of courage melding with the strokes of Mr. Thompson's art. Would she embrace the possibility of connection, even if it meant confronting her deepest fears? Julia's heart raced as she typed the final words of her message, an impulse that had rapidly morphed into necessity. She pressed send, and the soft beep of her phone felt both liberating and terrifying. The message hung in the air, a bridge between her and Mr. Thompson, an acknowledgement that she was no longer a solitary artist adrift in self-doubt. As she awaited his response, her mind swirled with possibilities. Was she merely being foolish to think that someone could help her see herself as enough? Her hands instinctively reached for the canvas resting in the corner of her room, an unfinished piece calling for attention, much like her unvoiced thoughts. It depicted a vibrant landscape, fiery reds and deep blues colliding in a storm of energy. Perhaps this painting reflected her internal battle, a representation of the chaos she identified within herself. What if she transferred this energy not just onto the canvas, but into her speech? Perhaps each brushstroke wasn't simply a choice in her art. It was an invitation for the audience to engage. If she painted her journey in words, would they resonate with the stories in their own lives? Slowly, she began to sketch the outline of her speech in her mind. Each heartbeat thudded like a drum, urging her to take action, to restructure her narrative beyond her fears. She pulled out a notebook and started jotting down thoughts, fragments of her path that included her childhood, the comfort she found in art, and the crippling fear that shadowed her creative spirit. What if, instead of addressing an audience, she spoke to friends she hadn't yet met? Suddenly, the notification sound pierced her focus. She nearly dropped the pencil in excitement. Mr. Thompson's response appeared on the screen. "Julia, your voice is integral to this showcase. Trust your story. It's yours to tell." His words rang with a clarity that propelled her forward. Perhaps it was time she confronted the root of her insecurities. What if embracing her vulnerability could unleash a powerful narrative that not only showcased her artistry, but also catalyzed her growth? She resolved to weave the fear of faltering into her speech. That very fear could become her compass. As she visualized standing in front of the audience, she saw herself both timid and fierce. Julia took a step back, letting her thoughts simmer. What if she experienced this showcase in a way she had never anticipated? Instead of the moment being a performance to uphold, it transformed into a dialogue, a mutual exchange of stories with the audience. If she challenged her own preconceptions about vulnerability, could she embrace the possibility of vulnerability as strength? Her pulse steadied. She could feel new energy arise as ideas poured onto the page. Words flowed until the ink had run dry. Each phrase she wrote became more than just outlines for a speech. They morphed into declarations of intent. She wanted her experience, as raw and uncertain as it may be, to resonate deeply with everyone in the room. As she wrapped up her thoughts, a crucial realization struck. Vulnerability could serve as the bridge to connection, not just with her audience but also with herself. If she acknowledged her fears in her speech, perhaps they would see reflected parts of themselves in her journey. The evening light dimmed outside, casting soft, shadowy hues across her workspace. Julia felt a sense of calm wash over her as she consulted her finished speech. Still, anxiety lingered like an uninvited guest, eager to consume her confidence. But should she allow that anxiety to lead? She put her hand against her heart, feeling its steady rhythm. No, she would not be led astray by doubt. To confront the unknown in all its facets was a courageous act, and she had already taken the first step. With a sense of purpose, she organized her notes and sketches. There was still time to polish her delivery, to transform her fears into an authentic exchange of creativity. Yet even amidst this determination, a knot of uncertainty tightened in her stomach. The moment she would stand before the crowd was creeping ever closer. Would she truly be able to transform fear into connection? She could face the audience soon, the canvas of their faces juxtaposed against her inner landscape. The moment was drawing near, but so was insight into her most profound fears. What if realizing her worth on that stage illuminated new pathways to her future? Julia stared at her notes, the ink slightly smudged from her enthusiastic scribbling. She could feel the weight of each word pressing against her consciousness, demanding to be heard. Yet the familiar shadows of self-doubt began creeping back in, threatening to distort her vision. What if her story fell flat? What if the vulnerability she craved to share was met with silence? These questions swirled like storm clouds, heavy with potential rain. She pushed her chair back, standing up to pace in the small, cluttered room. The unfinished canvas loomed over her, its vibrant colors beckoning like a secret yet to be unveiled. As she walked, the rhythmic sound of her footsteps began to settle her mind. Each step felt like a beat of determination, a reminder that she was capable of embracing discomfort. Seeking solace, Julia turned her thoughts inward. Her childhood memories danced at the fringes of her mind, reminding her of the little girl who found joy in vibrant hues, who painted her dreams without fear. It was in those early days that she learned to translate emotions onto the canvas, a language all her own. Why had she shifted from that fearless expression to this stage of hesitation? The answer was evident. The past few years had dulled her creative instincts, consumed by the relentless pursuit of validation. As she returned to the desk, she decided it was time to confront the root of her fear head-on. Perhaps her story could also be a mosaic of those moments when she had felt like an imposter, overshadowed in a world rife with talent. The more she embraced her fallibility, the stronger her voice would become. Julia took a deep breath and pulled out another sheet of paper. This time, instead of drafting a traditional speech, she began writing letters addressed to her younger self at different milestones. Her first art class, the nervous excitement of her first exhibit, the sting of harsh critiques. She penned words of encouragement and solidarity, as though she was relaying her current understanding back through time. "How could you ever doubt your worth as an artist?" she wrote, pausing to reflect. "Your heart and your passion count for more than any accolade. Embrace the journey, the messiness, and the uncertainty." By the time the ink dried on the final letter, Julia was surprised to feel a swell of empowerment within her. The act of reaching back to comfort and remind herself stoked an inferno of confidence. She realized that, much like the audience she would soon address, she too was a work in progress, still evolving, still learning, and endlessly resilient. However, with each moment of clarity, an underlying tension within her persisted, a sense that this speech was not solely about her. Was she ready to become a vessel through which others might hear their own stories? That was the question. Suddenly, a sharp knock interrupted her thoughts. The sound jolted her from her reverie, an announcement that the outside world still thrummed with energy and life. Mr. Thompson had invited her to join an informal meet and greet with some of the other artists. The thought struck both excitement and apprehension. The prospect of revealing her journey to others felt daunting. Should she attend, knowing full well the vulnerability it would require? Could she possibly share the letters she'd written and discuss them one-on-one, inviting others to do the same? As uncertainty swirled through her, a flicker of inspiration sparked to life. What if this encounter unfolded like her canvas? An exchange of colors, stories bursting forth, just waiting to be caught in a net of shared experience. Her choice crystallized. She would go, embracing the rawness of connection, ready to dance in the hues of vulnerability. Julia collected her notes and took one last glance at the unfinished canvas. It no longer appeared chaotic. Instead, the colors united in a symphony of potential. With a steadying breath, she stepped outside, propelled by the thrill of facing the unknown. But beneath her resolve lay an urgent question. What truths await discovery in the hearts of those she would soon meet? Would her journey of transformation intertwine with others, creating a broader narrative of courage? The gathering was buzzing with laughter and conversation. As Julia stepped into the room, her heart pounding in rhythm with the brass band playing softly in the background. She scanned the crowd, noting the diverse group of artists, each embodying their unique stories and experiences. There, in that vibrant chaos, she sensed a warmth, a collective understanding of what it meant to be vulnerable yet alive in the pursuit of creative expression. As she made her way to the center, Julia felt a contrast between the external energy of others and the internal storm of her apprehensions. What would they share? Would they be dismissive or encouraging? With a flicker of determination, she reminded herself that she was not alone. Each individual in the room was grappling with their own doubts, fears, and aspirations, an intricate tapestry of human experience waiting to be unveiled. Suddenly, she spotted a familiar face, Mia, an accomplished sculptor who had always inspired Julia from a distance. Their paths had crossed at previous exhibitions, and Julia had admired the strength in Mia's work. Approaching her felt like stepping onto sacred territory. Julia rehearsed a mental script, hoping to keep her nerves in check. "Hey, Mia," she said, forcing a smile. "I loved your latest piece. It felt so alive." Mia turned, her eyes brightening. "Thank you, Julia. I was hoping it would resonate with others. It's about stepping into vulnerability." The words landed heavily, tugging at Julia's core. "Vulnerability, right?" Julia echoed, the notion sparking her own internal dialogue. She hesitated before adding, "I've been thinking a lot about my own journey, how every artist has their struggles." Their conversation broadened, diving deep into the messy realities of self-doubt and fear of judgment. With each exchange, Julia felt the veil of intimidation lifting. She began to see her own narrative mirrored in Mia's experiences, a sign that her story was not only valid, but also a thread in a much larger fabric of creativity and resilience. Just as their dialogue came to a natural pause, someone new approached. A young man with paint-splattered jeans introduced himself as Eli, an emerging graffiti artist. He shared his challenges in breaking through the mainstream art scene, his voice a mix of defiance and vulnerability. Julia found herself nodding, captivated by the raw honesty pouring through his words. Listening to Eli's struggles unlocked something in her, a realization that pain often birthed the most profound art. Instead of retreating into self-doubt, she decided to offer her own journey, sharing snippets of the letters she had written to herself. Telling them felt liberating, like a cleansing fire fueled by shared intimacy. Julia winced as vulnerability bloomed. What if sharing her fears stripped her of creativity? But as she opened up, she noticed nods of understanding from Mia and Eli. It became evident that vulnerability is not a liability, but a bridge connecting hearts, an invitation to others to share their own stories. Just then, an older gentleman appeared, gripping the edge of the table as if to steady himself. He caught Julia's eye and smiled, an unexpected warmth radiating from his presence. Intrigued, she felt an instinctive pull towards him. What could he possibly teach her? As glances exchanged and stories interwove, Julia sensed a shift within herself. This gathering was becoming an exchange of colors, not just between artists, but from different generations, backgrounds, and struggles. Each conversation amplified her courage, pushing her boundaries further than she had thought possible. But just as the energy peaked, the man slowly spoke up. "I've been watching you all share." He paused, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "There's power in your narratives." His statement hung in the air, laced with a weight that ignited curiosity within Julia. What wisdom awaited behind those words? She felt the burn of unanswered questions. Was he about to reveal a life lesson that could further entangle their journeys? The anticipation quickened her pulse. She leaned in closer, waiting for what he might unveil. Mr. Thompson stood at the doorway of the bustling gallery, awash in the soft glow of twilight spilling through the windows. The art showcase was a testament to their resilience, a vibrational orchestra of color and story brought alive by the paintings he had once feared to reveal. His heart swelled at the sight of Julia checking on the final arrangements, her focused energy grounding the event. In the past months, he had watched her evolve from a hesitant student into a beacon of authenticity. She had embraced vulnerability, championed it even. As the gallery buzzed with anticipation, he recalled their first conversation on that fateful bus ride, where seeds of ambition were planted, each nurturing them into their present selves. Tonight, their shared endeavor would transcend merely showcasing art. It represented a culmination of personal growth. Julia had conquered her anxiety, reclaiming her voice. Each word she spoke was a step away from the shadow of doubt. Mr. Thompson himself had found assurance within her. The courage she exuded pushed him to confront the fears that had stifled his spirit for so long. This showcase had become more than his art. It was their collective metamorphosis. As the clock chimed, nearing the hour, the gallery filled with a motley crowd. Excitement buzzed, mingling with the tantalizing aroma of refreshments served on elegantly arranged trays. Julia spotted faces of those she had shared her journey with, the artist Mia, the defiant Eli, and even the older gentleman whose wise words had struck a chord. As she stood before the crowd, the warmth of the collective spirit wrapped around her like an embrace. Julia felt her heart race, but it was different now. Each thud resonated with empowerment. No longer was she merely an observer in her life. She had claimed her role as an artist, an architect of connection. "Welcome, everyone," she began, her voice steady and clear, echoing across the room. "Tonight we gather to celebrate not just art, but the beautiful web of stories that bind us all. We have all faced the specter of doubt and insecurity, yet tonight we choose to honor our truths." With each word she articulated, she captured the essence of vulnerability intertwined with strength. Her journey melded seamlessly into Mr. Thompson's as they stood side by side. They embodied the truth that art is not merely a product, but a powerful avenue for collective expression. As Julia spoke of their shared fears and triumphs, she felt the audience shift with her, empathizing with her narrative. They were captivated, reflecting their struggles within her own, and when Julia invited Mr. Thompson to join her, applause erupted spontaneously, a recognition of their profound connection. "Thank you, Julia," he began, his voice soft yet resonant. "You've shown me that art has the power to breathe life into forgotten dreams. Every stroke, every challenge faced here tonight, it emerges from the essence of our being. Together, we have redefined vulnerability." Their shared moment ignited the gallery. In the faces of attendees, the flicker of understanding spread, establishing a ripple of significance. People began to appreciate the raw beauty residing within imperfections, the stories that surged beneath the surface. As the evening flowed, curious whispers of gratitude filled the space. Strangers approached Julia, eager to share their own artistic journeys. With each exchange, she felt more rooted in her identity. No longer did she falter in the shadow of other artists. She had established her presence, fortified her voice, and claimed her space among them. An urgency enveloped the crowd, with many sharing candid moments of their experiences right then and there. A tapestry of camaraderie reflecting their growth. Mr. Thompson stood filled with pride, not just for his artwork, but for the realization that Julia had imparted a lightness in her narrative that others could embrace. As guests departed, enveloped in inspiration, Julia and Mr. Thompson shared a knowing glance. They had not only achieved a successful showcase, they had conquered their fear of exposure, uncovered hidden layers of creativity, and forged unwavering confidence. In the closing moments of the night, Julia found a quiet moment at the gallery's edge, appreciating the vibrant colors around her, now symbols of their journey toward accomplishment. She felt anchored, grounded in her truth. She had not only reclaimed her passion, but had risen steadfastly as a beacon for others, standing at the precipice of their fears. Their willingness to embrace vulnerability had triggered a transformation that would echo beyond the walls of this gallery. Tonight marked a turning point, a definitive completion of a chapter that revealed what it truly meant to overcome. She realized that her voice mattered, her story resonated, and her art would continue to flourish, unfurling like the masterpieces adorning the walls around her. As the lights dimmed, Julia wrapped her arms around Mr. Thompson, a visual proclamation of mutual respect and acknowledgement. Together they had achieved something profound, transcending barriers and redefining their legacy, not just in the art they created, but in the lives they had touched. It was their collective journey of transformation, unveiled in a gallery of courage, each painting a testament to the vibrant tapestry of raw beauty they had ultimately embraced. And now, as they stepped into the night, her heart soared with joy from a newfound realization. She was finally anchored in her identity as an artist and realized her potential to shape not only her future, but the narratives of those who dared to fearlessly share their own. If you've made it this far, you need to subscribe now to the channel for more incredible emotional journeys just like Julia's. This is the moment to show your support. Leaving a like will help us spread these meaningful stories. Comment your thoughts, theories, and reactions about Julia's transformation. It's crucial for us to hear from you. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who could find hope and inspiration in Julia's story. Make a difference in someone else's life now.